My sister scheduled her wedding on my graduation day. She got all the attention she wanted. No one showed up. I was the first person in my family to finish college, let alone go to law school. 7 years of hell, working as a paralegal during the day, attending classes at night, studying until 3 a.m., living on coffee and determination. I missed birthdays, holidays, family trips to the beach. Every time, my parents said they understood, but I could hear the disappointment in their voices when I couldn't make it to another Sunday dinner. My older sister Victoria got married at 21 to her college boyfriend Marcus, who worked in his father's real estate business. She spent the next 6 years posting perfect Instagram photos of their house, their vacations, their anniversary dinners. Meanwhile, I was in the library memorizing case law and eating vending machine dinners. When I found out I'd passed the bar exam on my first try, I called my family immediately. My graduation ceremony was set for June 12th. My mom cried on the phone. She said she'd been waiting for this moment since I was 10 years old and announced I wanted to be a lawyer after watching a courtroom drama on TV. My dad said he was going to wear his best suit and take me to the fanciest restaurant in the city afterward. I bought their plane tickets 2 weeks later. First class, because they deserved it after supporting me through 7 years of barely seeing their daughter. 3 weeks before graduation, Victoria called me. I was in my apartment reviewing notes for a job interview when my phone rang. She was practically screaming with excitement. She and Marcus were renewing their vows for their 7th anniversary. They wanted to have the big celebration they couldn't afford when they first got married. The date? June 12th. I felt my stomach drop. Victoria, that's my graduation day. You've had other graduations, she said, her voice suddenly cooler. This is once in a lifetime. Law school graduation isn't like high school, Vic. This is a big deal. I've been working toward this for 7 years. And I've been married for 7 years. It's symbolic. The venue had a cancellation for that exact date, and it's perfect. Besides, I already put down the deposit. You put down the deposit before telling me? I didn't think it would be a problem. Can't you just skip the ceremony and get your diploma mailed? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Victoria, Mom and Dad already have plane tickets. Everyone knows about this. Well, everyone can come to my vow renewal instead. It'll be more fun than sitting through a boring graduation ceremony anyway. I tried to stay calm. What about your actual wedding 7 years ago? She hung up on me. 10 minutes later, my mom called. Victoria had already gotten to her. My mom's voice was strained, careful. She said Victoria was really upset. The venue was non-refundable. It would be such a waste of money. You understand, don't you? You're always so reasonable about these things. My dad got on the phone next. He said maybe I could attend graduation in the morning and fly out for the evening reception. When I pointed out that Victoria's ceremony was in another state and started at 2 p.m., the exact same time as my graduation, he got quiet. Then he said, well, your sister did book this venue months ago. No, she didn't. She just told me about it today. Silence. We'll figure something out, my dad finally said, but I could hear the defeat in his voice. He'd already decided. They chose her vow renewal. I told them I understood completely. I wished Victoria all the best. Then I hung up and stared at my law degree hanging on the wall, the one I'd earned after my first year. It felt hollow suddenly, but then something shifted inside me. A cold clarity I'd learned in contract negotiations and courtroom strategy. If they wanted to choose Victoria, fine. But they were going to see exactly what they'd chosen over. I started making calls the next day. First, my grandmother. She'd been a paralegal for 40 years before retiring, and she was the reason I'd gone into law. When I told her about my graduation, she remembered immediately. She'd marked it on her calendar 6 months ago. When I mentioned Victoria's vow renewal was the same day, there was a long pause. Your sister scheduled her party on your graduation day? She said the venue had a last-minute opening. That girl has always been thoughtless. My grandmother's voice was sharp. I'll be at your graduation. I wouldn't miss it for anything. What about Victoria? I was at her actual wedding. I don't need to watch her renew vows to the same man. You're becoming a lawyer. That matters. Next, I called my Uncle James, my dad's brother. He'd helped me pay for my LSAT prep course when I couldn't afford it. When I told him about graduation, he sounded genuinely excited. When I mentioned Victoria's event was the same day, he swore under his breath. Are you kidding me? After everything you've done? I just wanted you to know you have 2 options that day. There's only one option as far as I'm concerned. I'll be at your graduation. I called my Aunt Susan next. She was a lawyer herself, working in family law for 25 years. She'd given me advice throughout law school, reviewed my resume, connected me with people in the field. When I told her about the conflict, she laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Of course Victoria did this. She's been jealous of you since you started law school. She said I'm being selfish. You're being selfish? You worked your ass off for 7 years while she posted vacation photos online. I'll be at graduation, and I'm bringing James and Sarah with me. The calls continued. My cousin Daniel, who I'd helped with his custody case as a law student intern. He picked my graduation immediately. My childhood friend Maya, who'd watched me struggle through contracts and civil procedure. She said she'd already requested the day off work weeks ago for my ceremony. I called Marcus's parents next. That felt risky, but I remembered how kind they'd been at Marcus and Victoria's actual wedding. How his mother Patricia had told me she admired my determination to go to law school. When I explained the situation, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Victoria scheduled this on your graduation day? She said the venue had an opening. Patricia trailed off. We'll be at your graduation. Marcus's brother is graduating from business school in August. If Victoria thinks family accomplishments don't matter, she needs to learn otherwise. I wasn't trying to sabotage Victoria's event. I was just telling people about mine. But with each call, I watched what should have been her guest list become mine instead. 2 weeks before June 12th, Victoria called me screaming. What did you do? Everyone's canceling. I didn't do anything. I just told people about my graduation. You told them to skip my vow renewal. No, I told them when and where my graduation was. They made their own choices. Grandmother cancelled. Uncle James cancelled. Even Marcus's parents cancelled. They were all invited to my graduation 6 months ago. Vic, you scheduled your event on top of mine. You're ruining my special day. I'm having my graduation on the day that was always planned. You're the one who created this conflict. She hung up on me again. My mom called an hour later. Her voice was strained, embarrassed. She asked if I could talk to people, convince them to go to Victoria's event instead. I said no. She asked why I was being so stubborn. I reminded her that she and Dad had chosen Victoria's vow renewal over my graduation, so clearly they thought her event was more important. Why did it matter if other people felt differently? She didn't have an answer for that. 3 days later, Victoria posted a long message on Facebook about family betrayal and how people show their true colors during important moments. The comments section didn't go the way she expected. Person after person congratulated me on law school. Several people pointed out that scheduling a party on someone's graduation day, especially law school graduation, was inconsiderate. One of her own college friends wrote that she'd been wondering why Victoria chose that specific date and now it made sense. Victoria deleted the post 2 hours later. The week before graduation, my Aunt Susan took me to lunch at a nice restaurant downtown. She ordered wine for both of us and raised her glass. To the newest lawyer in the family. We drank, and then she pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside was a check for $5,000. What is this? Partnership bonus from my firm. I want you to have it for your first year expenses. Professional wardrobe, bar association fees, whatever you need. Aunt Susan, this is too much. It's not. You worked 3 jobs while going to law school at night. You never complained, never asked for help, just kept pushing forward. That kind of determination is rare. I'm proud to help you start your career. I tried not to cry in the middle of the restaurant, but my eyes got wet anyway. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Your parents are making a mistake, she said quietly. But you're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary. My grandmother called me 2 days before graduation. She said she'd been thinking a lot about family and what it really meant. She told me about her own mother, who'd discouraged her from working, who thought women should stay home. My grandmother had become a paralegal anyway, worked her whole career, helped put my dad through college. You remind me of myself, she said. Determined, willing to do what's hard because it matters. I'm changing my will. You're getting the house when I'm gone. Grandma, your parents chose to miss your graduation. They chose wrong. My house goes to someone who values education and hard work. That's you. I sat on my apartment floor after we hung up, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of what was happening. My immediate family had chosen my sister's party over my achievement, but everyone else was choosing me. It felt like winning and losing at the same time. The morning of June 12th arrived with clouds that threatened rain but never delivered. I woke up at 6, too nervous to sleep longer. I made coffee and sat at my small kitchen table reviewing my graduation program. My name was there in print, Juris Doctor, with honors. 7 years of work summarized in 3 words. Maya picked me up at 9. She'd gotten us both coffee from the good place downtown and brought breakfast sandwiches. We sat in my kitchen eating and talking about nothing important, her new job, her boyfriend's annoying roommate, the coffee shop that was opening down the street. Normal things that made the morning feel less heavy. Your parents are idiots, Maya said suddenly. I know. No, I mean it. You're going to be amazing. You're already amazing, and they're going to regret this. Maybe, definitely, trust me, 20 years from now, you'll be a successful lawyer and they'll still be talking about the time they chose your sister's party over your law school graduation. It'll be their defining mistake as parents. We drove to the university together. The parking lot was already filling with graduates in black gowns and families taking photos. I found my assigned seat in the staging area and checked in with the registrar's assistant. She handed me my program and a name card for when I crossed the stage. The auditorium was huge, with rows of seats rising up on 3 sides. As we filed in alphabetically, I scanned the crowd looking for familiar faces. My grandmother sat in the second row wearing a lavender dress and pearls. Uncle James and Aunt Susan sat next to her with their spouses. Marcus's parents were 3 rows back. My cousin Daniel waved from the left side. Maya's entire family had come, her parents, her brother, even her grandmother who rarely left the house. The front row had 2 empty seats where my parents should have been sitting. I looked at them for just a moment, then kept walking. The dean gave a speech about justice and service. The keynote speaker talked about the responsibility that comes with a law degree. Names started being called. We stood one by one, walked across the stage, shook hands, received our diplomas. When they called my name, the applause was loud. I looked out and saw my grandmother standing up, clapping harder than anyone. Aunt Susan stood next, then Uncle James, then more people. Half my section of the auditorium was on their feet. I took my diploma from the dean and walked back to my seat with my eyes burning. Every late night studying, every missed holiday, every time someone asked why I was putting myself through this. All of it led to this moment, these people standing and applauding because they actually understood what I'd accomplished. After the ceremony ended, we all threw our caps in the air like tradition demanded. I got swept up in the crowd pushing toward the exits where families were waiting. My grandmother found me first. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and when she pulled back, she was crying. I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud. Aunt Susan hugged me next, then Uncle James, then my cousin, then Maya's whole family. Patricia, Marcus's mother, held my hands and looked me in the eye. Your mother should be here. But I'm honored to celebrate you today. That's when I started crying. Patricia hugged me while I tried not to completely fall apart in the middle of the crowd. When I pulled myself together, she was smiling. You're going to be an incredible lawyer. We took photos for 30 minutes. My grandmother insisted on individual shots, group shots, photos with me in my regalia, photos with just the two of us. Uncle James organized his family for pictures. Maya took what felt like 100 photos on her phone. The whole thing felt overwhelming in the best way. Aunt Susan announced she'd made reservations at the best steakhouse in the city for 6 p.m. She'd reserved their private dining room. Everyone was invited. My grandmother said that sounded perfect. We agreed to meet there and started heading to our cars. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out and saw messages from my parents. My mom had sent 5 texts asking for photos, saying she was sorry they couldn't be there, hoping I had a wonderful day. My dad's message said he was proud and wished he could have seen me walk across that stage. I read them twice. The words felt empty. They'd made their choice weeks ago. These texts were just them trying to feel better about it. I forwarded them 3 photos without adding any message. My mom immediately responded with heart emojis and congratulations. I put my phone back in my purse and didn't look at it again for the rest of the afternoon. The restaurant's private room had a long table set for 20 people. Aunt Susan had ordered appetizers in advance, crab cakes, calamari, bruschetta. Everyone found seats and started passing plates around. I sat between my grandmother and Maya in the middle of all the noise and conversation and laughter. Uncle James stood up and tapped his wine glass. The room got quiet. He said he wanted to make a toast. He talked about watching me decide to go to law school, watching me work impossible hours while never giving up. He said I reminded him of what was possible when you committed fully to something you believed in. To the newest lawyer in the family, may you fight for justice and never forget the people who believe in you. Everyone raised their glasses. My grandmother squeezed my hand under the table. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it through the appetizers, but during a lull in conversation, I checked it. Victoria had texted me, a long message that filled my screen. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't realize how important graduation was to me. But then she spent 4 paragraphs explaining about wedding stress and feeling like she was always in my shadow. She said seeing everyone choose my graduation over her vow renewal made her realize people thought she was selfish. She hoped I could understand and forgive her. I read it twice. The apology was buried under so much justification it barely counted as one. I typed back a short message saying I appreciated her reaching out and hoped her day had been nice. Then I put my phone on silent and focused on the people actually sitting around me. Dinner arrived. Steaks and lobster and sides we all shared. The conversation got louder. Uncle James told embarrassing stories about me as a kid. Maya talked about our first day of law school when we were both terrified. My cousin Daniel mentioned the time I'd helped him understand custody law and accidentally cited cases for 3 straight hours without realizing he'd stopped taking notes 20 minutes in. Everyone laughed. The whole evening felt warm and right. These were my people. They'd shown up when it mattered. Near the end of dinner, Aunt Susan stood up again. She said she'd been thinking about family lately, about what it really meant to support each other. She said sometimes the people who show up aren't the ones you expect, but they're the ones who matter most. She looked directly at me. You've built something real here. A career, yes, but also a family of people who recognize your worth. Don't forget that. The table was quiet for a moment. My grandmother nodded in agreement. Uncle James raised his glass again. Everyone drank. After dinner, we moved to the lobby for coffee and dessert. The restaurant had prepared a graduation cake, white frosting with, "Congratulations, counselor," written in dark chocolate. My grandmother took more photos while they cut it. I stepped outside for a moment to get some air. The evening was warm, and the street was busy with people heading to restaurants and bars. I leaned against the building and just breathed. Maya came out a minute later. You okay? Yeah, just needed a minute. Big day. Huge day. She stood next to me, not saying anything, just being there. After a while, she said, your parents really messed up. I know, but look at everyone in there. You're not alone. I know that too. We went back inside. The party continued for another hour. People told stories and laughed and made plans to get together again soon. My grandmother pulled me aside before leaving and handed me another envelope. Inside was a check for the security deposit and first month's rent on a better apartment, one closer to the law firm where I'd be starting work in 2 months. You're going to need a professional address, she said. Somewhere nice enough for client meetings if they come to you. Consider this your graduation gift. I hugged her and couldn't find words. She just patted my back and told me she loved me. The rest of the week passed in a blur. I moved into the new apartment my grandmother had helped me afford. It had 2 bedrooms, one I could use as an office, and big windows that let in morning light. I set up my desk and hung my law degree on the wall above it. My parents called 3 days after graduation. My mom asked if we could meet for dinner. I agreed to meet them at a restaurant halfway between my new apartment and their house. When I arrived, they were already sitting at a booth near the back. My dad stood up awkwardly, like he wasn't sure if he should hug me. We ordered food and made small talk until the server left. Then my mom started explaining. They'd been in an impossible position, she said. Victoria had been so excited about the vow renewal. The venue was non-refundable. They thought I would understand because I was always the reasonable one. She said they felt terrible about missing graduation, but they didn't know what else to do. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When they finished, I put down my fork. I do understand, I said. You chose Victoria, that's fine, you're allowed to make that choice. My mom looked relieved for half a second. But our relationship is different now, I continued. Because I can't count on you to show up for me when it matters. You've made that clear. My dad's jaw tightened. That's not fair, isn't it? I worked for 7 years to become a lawyer. You knew about graduation 6 months in advance. I bought you plane tickets. And you chose Victoria's party instead. She's our daughter too, my mom said quietly. I know, and I'm your daughter. The one who just graduated law school with honors. The one who worked 3 jobs to pay for it. The one whose biggest accomplishment you missed because Victoria wanted attention. Neither of them said anything. My mom's eyes were wet. My dad stared at his plate. I'm not saying we can't have a relationship, I said. But it's going to be different. I'm going to invest my time and energy in people who invest in me. That's just how it's going to be. We finished dinner in near silence. When we left, my mom hugged me and whispered that she was sorry. I hugged her back but didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. Victoria texted me 2 weeks later asking if we could get coffee. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. We met at a shop near her house. She looked tired, older than her 28 years. She ordered a vanilla latte and we sat outside in the afternoon heat. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything. Then Victoria started talking. She said things with Marcus had been tense since the vow renewal got cancelled. He'd been disappointed that his parents chose my graduation over their ceremony. They'd been fighting more. She admitted she'd been jealous of me for years, jealous of my drive, my accomplishments, the way extended family talked about me with pride. Watching everyone pick your graduation over my vow renewal made me realize something, she said, looking down at her coffee. People respect what you've built. They don't respect me the same way. Vic, no, let me finish. I chose the easy path. Got married young, had the Instagram perfect life. But I didn't build anything real. You did. And I was so jealous that I tried to overshadow your achievement with my party. It was the most honest she'd ever been with me. She didn't fully apologize or take complete responsibility, but it was closer to real self-awareness than I'd ever seen from her. I appreciate you being honest, I said. We talked for another hour. About her marriage, her kids, my new job starting in a month. About growing up in the same house but choosing such different paths. It wasn't like we suddenly became close, but something shifted. The dynamic between us felt less competitive, more honest. When we left, she hugged me. I am proud of you, you know. I should have said that 7 years ago when you started law school. Thanks, Vic, and I'm sorry I scheduled my vow renewal on your graduation day. That was selfish. Yeah, it was. She laughed, surprised. You're not going to make this easy on me, are you? Would you respect me if I did? Probably not. We hugged again and went our separate ways. 2 months later, I started my job at the law firm. Aunt Susan worked in a different department, but she made a point of introducing me to everyone on my first day. She told people I'd graduated with honors, that I'd worked my way through school. By lunch, 3 different attorneys had stopped by my office to welcome me. The work was intense from day one. I stayed late most nights reviewing case files and drafting motions. But I loved it. Every hour I spent building arguments, researching precedent, crafting strategy felt like validation for those 7 years of sacrifice. My grandmother started calling me counselor every time we talked. She invited me to Sunday dinners at her house every week. Sometimes Aunt Susan came with her family. Sometimes it was just the 2 of us eating pot roast and talking about her years as a paralegal. My relationship with my parents stayed complicated. We talked every few weeks, but there was distance that hadn't been there before. My mom asked about work. My dad asked about my apartment. Neither of them mentioned missing graduation again. The topic sat between us like something we'd all agreed to never discuss. Victoria and I texted sometimes about normal sister things. She sent photos of her kids. I told her about interesting cases I was working on. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. We were just 2 sisters who'd learned we wanted different things from life. 6 months into my new job, I won my first case. It was small, a contract dispute between a small business owner and a supplier, but I built the argument, presented the evidence, convinced the judge. When the ruling came down in our client's favor, the partner I was working under shook my hand and told me I had good instincts. I called my grandmother first. She cried on the phone and said she knew I'd be brilliant. Aunt Susan took me to lunch to celebrate. Maya sent me flowers at the office with a card that said, "First of many victories." My parents found out through Facebook. I'd posted a professional photo from the courthouse with a caption about my first win. My mom called an hour later to congratulate me. She asked why I hadn't told them directly. I said I'd been busy with work. She got quiet, and I knew she understood. The distance between us was my choice now, not just circumstance. A year after graduation, my firm promoted me ahead of schedule. The senior partner said my work ethic and strategic thinking set me apart. They gave me a raise and my own caseload. I moved into a bigger office with a window overlooking downtown. Aunt Susan took me to dinner to celebrate. Over wine and pasta, she said she'd been watching my career with pride. She told me about her own early years as a lawyer, the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated field, the satisfaction of winning cases others thought were unwinnable. "You have something special," she said. "You understand that law isn't just about rules and precedent. It's about people and their stories. That's what makes great lawyers." I thought about graduation day as we talked. About the empty seats where my parents should have been. About my grandmother standing and applauding. About everyone who'd chosen to show up when it mattered. I learned something important that day, I told Aunt Susan. When Victoria scheduled her vow renewal on my graduation, and everyone had to choose between us. "What's that? Some people will always choose wrong. But if you're doing something that matters, enough people will choose right." And those are the ones worth keeping around. Aunt Susan smiled. You learned that faster than I did. Took me 20 years to figure it out. 2 years after graduation, I made partner at the firm. At 32 years old, I was one of the youngest partners in the firm's history. The announcement came on a Thursday, and by Friday morning, my office was full of flowers from colleagues and clients. My grandmother threw a party at her house that weekend. She invited everyone, Aunt Susan's family, Uncle James and his wife, Marcus's parents, Maya and her family, even some of my colleagues from the firm. She hired a caterer and bought champagne and made sure everyone had enough to eat. In the middle of the party, she clinked her glass and made a toast. She talked about watching me decide to become a lawyer, watching me work impossible hours to make it happen, watching me build a career that mattered. She said she'd never been prouder of anyone in her life. Some of you know that her parents missed her law school graduation, she said, and the room got quiet. They made a choice that day. The wrong choice. But look at everyone here now. Look at the family she's built, the career she's created, the life she's made for herself. She didn't need them to succeed. And that's the greatest accomplishment of all. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt my eyes get wet, but I didn't look away. These were my people, the ones who'd shown up on graduation day and every day since. My parents weren't at the party. My grandmother hadn't invited them. When I asked her about it later, she said simply, they made their choice 2 years ago. They have to live with it. Victoria texted me congratulations when she saw the news on social media. She said she was proud of me and meant it. We'd had coffee a few times over the past 2 years, and something like a real relationship was slowly building between us. Not the competitive dynamic from before, but something more honest. I texted her back thanking her and asking about her kids. She sent photos of them at soccer practice. Normal sister things. Standing in my grandmother's backyard that evening, surrounded by people who'd chosen to invest in my success, I felt genuinely happy. The hurt from 2 years ago had faded into something else, clarity about who mattered and who didn't. My phone rang while I was driving home. My mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. I saw about your promotion, she said. Congratulations. Thanks. I wish we'd been there when you graduated. I wish I could go back and change that day. I didn't say anything for a moment. But you can't. No, I can't. But I want you to know I think about it all the time. About missing the most important day of your life because Victoria wanted attention. It wasn't the most important day of my life, Mom. It was just the first one where I learned who really supported me. She was quiet. Then, can I come to your office sometime? See where you work. Sure. Call me next week and we'll figure out a time. Okay. I love you. I love you too. I hung up feeling lighter than I expected. I didn't forgive them, not really. But I was okay with the distance between us. I'd built something without their support. I'd found people who showed up. That was enough. 5 years after graduation, I opened my own practice. A small firm focused on representing small businesses and individuals who couldn't afford big corporate lawyers. Aunt Susan helped me set up the business structure. My grandmother co-signed my lease. Uncle James connected me with potential clients. Within 6 months, I had more work than I could handle and hired 2 junior associates. Victoria called me when she heard about the new firm. She said she was impressed, that I'd built exactly the kind of career she'd always known I would. We met for coffee and she told me about going back to school herself, community college, studying accounting. She was working toward a degree while her kids were in school. Watching you made me realize I wanted to build something too, she said. I wasted a lot of years being jealous instead of being inspired. It's not too late. I know. That's what Marcus keeps saying. We talked for 2 hours that day. About her marriage, which had gotten stronger after they worked through their problems. About her kids and my practice. About our parents, who we both kept at arm's length now. About the day she'd scheduled her vow renewal on my graduation and how it had changed everything between us. I was so stupid, she said. I threw away years of having a real relationship with my sister because I wanted attention. We're having a real relationship now. Yeah, we are. When I left that coffee shop, I realized I'd forgiven her. Not because she'd earned it through years of apologies, but because holding on to the hurt didn't serve me anymore. She'd been selfish and jealous and wrong. But she'd grown. And so had I. 10 years after graduation, I stood in my own office on the 10th floor of a building downtown. My name was on the door, my firm, my practice, my achievement. Through the window, I could see the whole city spread out below. My phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother. She was 92 now and slowing down, but she still called me every week to hear about my cases. Her message said she was proud of me. That she'd always known I'd do something extraordinary. I thought about graduation day. About the empty seats where my parents should have been. About my grandmother standing and applauding. About Aunt Susan's toast at the restaurant afterward. About Maya bringing me coffee and telling me I'd be amazing. They'd been right. All of them. I had built something real. Not despite my family's lack of support, but because I'd learned to find support elsewhere. Because I'd learned that chosen family matters as much as blood. Because I'd learned that showing up is what defines love, not genetics. My parents and I had rebuilt something over the past 10 years. Not the relationship we'd had before, but something more honest. They came to my office sometimes. We had dinner every few months. But the distance remained, and we'd all accepted it. Victoria and I talked regularly now. Real conversations about real things. She'd finished her accounting degree and was working at a small firm, building her own career. She told me once that missing my graduation was the best thing that ever happened to our relationship because it forced us both to be honest about who we were. Standing in my office that morning, I realized I'd stopped being angry years ago. I'd stopped needing my parents' validation. I'd built a life that mattered, with people who mattered, doing work that mattered. That was enough. My phone rang. A new client, a small business owner who needed help with a contract dispute. I picked up and started asking questions, building the case in my mind, planning strategy. This was what I'd worked for. This was what those 7 years of sacrifice had built. And every person who'd shown up on graduation day, my grandmother, Aunt Susan, Uncle James, Maya, Marcus's parents, all of them, they'd been part of building it too. Not because they'd made it easier, but because they'd shown me that succeeding meant finding people who believed in you enough to show up when it mattered. Victoria had wanted all the attention that day. Instead, she'd gotten none of it. And I'd gotten something better, clarity about who really mattered in my life. 10 years later, that clarity had become the foundation of everything I'd built. The client on the phone was explaining her problem. I pulled up a blank document on my computer and started taking notes. Another case. Another client who needed someone to fight for them. This was my life now. This was what I'd chosen. And it was exactly right. Subscribe for more stories like this.